Good morning, Nacogdoches, and welcome to the Easter at the Coliseum, the 21-day devotion countdown. My name is Pastor Noel. Today is day 6, Saturday, March the 25th, and I invite you today to read with me Matthew 13, verses 24 through 43. Then go to our website, noeldeer.org/Easter, and walk through the 3-2-1 Easter prayer plan. Now, let me take a moment and briefly overview what you're going to read today. In this passage, we're going to see 5 parables. Jesus is going to tell one story after another story to communicate these important spiritual truths, 5 parables. The first is the parable of the wheat and the weeds, or you may know it as the parable of the wheat and the tares. A tare is a weed. The second one is the parable of the mustard seed, and then the parable of leaven. I think that parable is just one verse long. It's a short story. And then the parable of hidden treasure, and then the parable of the priceless pearl. Now, I'll say just a word or two about each of these. The parable of the wheat and tares, this is verses 24 through 30, and then Jesus explains this parable in verses 36 through 43. Now, this is about false Christians, false believers in the church. Very important parable. Now, the parable of the mustard seed and the parable of leaven have similar meanings. This is about how the kingdom of God grows and has an outsized effect on our lives, on our families, and on the world. And then the parable of the hidden treasure and the parable of the priceless pearl, also very similar meanings. Both of these are pictures of how a person comes to know the Lord. Now, when I did my devotion on this passage, there was one big thing that stood out to me, and I knew what it would be even before I began to read, because I love this passage. It's the parable of the hidden treasure. That is a perfect picture of how I came to know the Lord. I was just living my life like the man in the parable, just walking through the field. I encountered the gospel. I heard someone speak the gospel of Jesus Christ. But I had heard that many times before. It was no big deal to me. I was not interested. It wasn't going to bring some change in my life. But just like stumping my toe on a hidden treasure in a field, all of a sudden I recognized how much I needed the gospel, how much I needed Jesus, what a valuable treasure his sacrifice on the cross, his resurrection was. And then I surrendered everything I had to Jesus, and I was adopted into the family of God. And I'm reminded of that every time I read this parable. I didn't do anything to earn my salvation. I didn't figure something out. The Lord, just in his love and grace and mercy, just allowed me to stumble across something and recognize its value. And through that, the Lord changed my life. So thankful for that. So I hope this passage will be an encouragement to you. All of these parables, so important. And I hope this will be an encouragement not only in our spiritual lives, but also that we might have an influence in the spiritual lives of those around us, especially as we invite them to our Easter at the Coliseum event on April the 9th. I hope I'll see you here tomorrow.